Hey guys, it's Miss Parrish, and once I get my computer situated, I'm coming to you today to talk to you guys about multiplication equations. Okay, as you know, we have been um, working on equations this week. We've already learned how to do addition equations, subtraction equations, and today we're going to do multiplication equations. And I hope I'm doing this in the classroom, so hopefully my smartboard will cooperate today. Um, our standard is the same as it has been all week. 6EE7, solve real world and mathematical problems by writing and solving equations. That's what we're doing today. And I can see, give me 1 second, my board is already trying to be a little difficult. Um, just like we talked about on Tuesday, we're still going to be working backwards today. We're using the inverse operations. Remember, inverse means opposite. Just like we talked about all week, our goal is to get the variable by itself. We call that isolating the variable. We want to get it by itself. We're going to continue to follow the golden rule of whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. We will still be showing our work using the 5 lines, just like we did Monday and Tuesday. And as always, we will check our work. That will be 2 of our 5 lines. Okay. Now, let's talk for just a second about a multiplication equation. All right. Now, if you are working from home, you will need to have a sheet of paper. Sorry, I didn't say that to begin with. Make sure you've got a sheet of paper. There are some notes that you're going to want to copy down, and you are going to want to copy down all of the examples that we do together. Okay, that will help you with your assignment when you go to do that, and it will just help you understand how to do this as well. Okay, you probably want to attach a copy of your notes in with your assignment to show your teacher that you did take those notes. Okay. All right. So if you need to pause this to get paper or anything, please do so. Okay, what is a multiplication equation? The equation 2x equals 10 is a multiplication equation. Remember, when you have the number and the letter touching, like the 2 and the x are, that means to multiply. We've talked about that several times since we've started this unit on algebra, okay? Anytime the number and letters touching, it means to multiply. So you might want to write that down, especially if that's something that you have struggled with remembering. Okay, the 2 and the x together means to multiply. We call 2 the coefficient of x because it is the number by which x is multiplied. Remember when we labeled parts of an expression, okay? The number that is attached to the variable is your coefficient. We call that like the coworker, okay? It's like the coworker of the variable. So that's how you remember what that's called. Now, in red, you definitely want to write this down. To solve a multiplication equation, you want to do the inverse operation or the opposite. And what is the opposite of multiplication? It is division. Okay. Monday, when we did addition equations, you solved it by doing the opposite, which was subtraction. Tuesday, when we did subtraction equations, you solved it by doing the opposite, which was addition. Today, we're working a multiplication equation, so we are going to solve it by using division, which is the opposite. Okay, go over here again. Now, this is just an example of what our work is going to look like today. Okay, so suppose you've got the multiplication equation 2x equals 10. Remember, 2x means 2 times x. And just like we've talked about all week, some of these are very easy. And yes, you can do them in your head. But just like Ms. Klein explained in the first video this week, and as the way we've explained it to the students in class, you have to show your work to understand the process. You are going to have harder problems as we go through math, through 6th grade and then on through 7th and 8th grade. So you have to understand the process so when you get to those harder problems, you know how to solve it. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at this multiplication equation. Again, this is just an example of what we're going to be doing. So you've got 2x equals 10, meaning 2 times x is going to equal 10. So to solve this, just like we said, we're going to do the opposite, which is division. So you'll notice in the second part of this example, they have put a 2 underneath both of these parts. Okay, like we said, we want to isolate the variable, get it by itself. So whatever number is with the variable is the number we want to get rid of. In this case, the 2 is with the variable. So that means we're going to have to divide both sides by 2 to solve this problem. So notice that we have put a line under both of these. Okay, that kind of means divide. Okay, that's like division. We're not actually going to use a division symbol right here. We're just going to put this line underneath. That just makes it simple. And so we're going to divide both sides by 2. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So if I've divided this side, the left side by 2, I need to divide the right side by 2. So once you divide 2 by 2, that's going to cancel out just like we did in the other equations this week. So 2 divided by 2 is going to cancel out and be 1. You would be left with the x, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5, and that's what you see there at the bottom. Okay, so our answer would be x equals 5. And again, you could probably do that in your head, but we're going to show our work like we're supposed to. So we have our 3 lines. Remember, the last thing we do that we've done all week is to check it. We check it by taking our answer, okay, which we got as 5, and plugging that back in for x to the in the original equation. So 2x means 2 times whatever x is. We just found that x is 5, and it's supposed to equal 10. So I tell my kids to go ahead and bring that answer down and say, well, it's supposed to equal that. What is 2 times 5? Well, 2 times 5 is 10, so that checks out. Okay? And checking it is a good way to make sure you didn't make mistakes. So this is the format we're going to follow today. Okay? We're going to have a multiplication equation. We're going to divide it by whatever the coefficient is with the variable and get our answer. Okay? I'm not sure why my board's not letting me change it. Okay, let's start with this first example. Write this one down. 4n equals 8. 4n equals 8. Now again, we want to divide both sides. So just go ahead and put that line underneath to represent divide. It's just like if you have an improper fraction, right, where the top's bigger, we always divide. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. It's not a fraction, but we're putting that bar to mean divide. Remember, you want to divide by whatever number is attached to the variable. The 4 is what's attached to the variable, so that's what we need to divide both sides by. Guys, please make sure you're showing it on both sides, okay? So the 4's, just like before, will cancel out. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so you can just leave that with the n. N equals, what is 8 divided by 4? 8 divided by 4 is 2. So my answer is 2. Now, when you go to type your answer into the Google form, you're just going to type the number. Okay, we had a little confusion earlier this week with people typing different things in or typing the variable. You only have to put the number in. Okay, so if this was a problem on my homework, I would type 2 into the Google form. Now we're going to check it. We've got this counts as a line, that counts as a line, that counts as a line. So there's 3 of our 5 lines. So to check ourselves, I'm going to plug 2 in for the letter N. So 4N means 4 times N. We said N was 2. So I've rewritten my original equation by plugging 2 in for the variable. It's supposed to equal 8. What is 4 times 2? It is 8. My equation is balanced. It matches. So I'm correct, and that's my last 2 lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't have to draw those lines. I was just showing you that you've got your 5 lines there. So it's pretty simple today. Most of these are fairly easy. Okay, if you need to stop the video at any time, please do so if I'm going through some of these faster than you need me to. All right, the next one is 3x equals 9. So write that one down. Now remember, we're going to divide both sides by the coefficient that is attached to the variable. In this case, it is the 3. Okay, that's going to cancel, and I'm left with x equals, what is 9 divided by 3? It is 3. So my answer is 3. But again, I have to check myself. So I'm going to plug 3 in for the x. So 3 times 3 should equal 9. And 3 times 3, remember you're multiplying, you're not adding here. So 3 times 3 is 9, and that checks out. Starting off with some easy ones here. I'm not sure. All right, now try this one. All they've done, like we've seen earlier this week, is they've switched the problem around. They've put the operation on the right side instead of the left and put the answer on the left instead of the right. They've just switched the order, but you're still going to work it the same. Okay, so you've got 10 equals 5x. So put your little line there showing you're going to divide. Now think about what we're going to divide here, what number we're going to use. Remember, look at the number that is attached to the variable. Look at your coefficient. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. Sorry, my board's starting to act up. Divide both sides by 5. That's going to cancel out, and you're left with the x. And what is 10 divided by 5? 10 divided by 5 is 2. So my answer would be x equals 2. Again, we're going to check ourselves by plugging 2 in for x into the original equation. So plug the 2 in up there. So 5 times 2, it's supposed to equal 10. Let's see, what is 5 times 2? 5 times 2 is 10, so that works out. I started to say, are there any questions? But I don't think you can tell me at this point, so sorry about that. All right, let's look at the next one. 3x equals 15. Again, put your line underneath it to divide. We're going to divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 3. That's going to cancel out, and you're left with x equals, what is 15 divided by 3? It is 5. X equals 5. Again, we're going to check ourselves, plug 5 in for x, so that would be 3 times 5 should equal 15. 3 times 5 is 15, and 15 is equal to 15. Okay, so far these have been pretty easy division. We are going to get to some harder ones here in a second, though. We just want to make sure you understand the process on some of these easier ones. Okay, here's another one that's got it switched around. So 8 equals 4x. Again, you want to draw the line underneath. We're going to divide by the coefficient, the number attached to the variable, which is a 4. Okay, the 4s are going to cancel out, and you're left with x equals 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So now we want to check ourselves. Plug 2 in for x. So 4 times 2 should equal 8. What is 4 times 2? It is 8. So that one's correct. Like I said, if you need to stop this, you can do so. All right. Try this one on your own. Pause the video for a second. Try this one on your own, and then I will go over it. Okay, you've got 2x equals 14. You want to divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 2. That one's going to cancel out, and you're left with x equals, what is 14 divided by 2? 14 divided by 2 is 7. So 7 would be my answer. Now I'm going to check it by plugging 7 into the original equation. So that would be 2 times 7 is supposed to equal 14. Let's see if it does. 2 times 7, 14. That one checks out. Hopefully you got that one all on your own. All right, now those were the easy ones. Those were all whole numbers, simple numbers, fairly easy division. As we've done all week, we are going to do some with fractions and decimals. Okay, so let's stop for just a second and think about this. What is the rule for dividing fractions? Now, if you can't remember that, you might want to write this on your notes, because this will be very helpful when you do the ones on your homework. What is the rule for dividing fractions? We had 3 letters. that we remembered when we divide fractions. The rule for dividing fractions, we have the letters K, CF. Remember, it's not Kentucky Fried Chicken. If you watch the video back, that old lesson, I think Mr. Harden dressed up as Colonel Sanders. So the rule is keep, I'm sorry, where they work on this bathroom, that makes my board right weird. Change and flip. So KCF stands for keep, change, flip. Remember, we keep the first fraction, we change the second one, and we flip the third one, okay? Now, when we work this one, it's going to be a little bit different than we did the ones with the whole numbers on the previous examples, okay? So kind of stick with me. We are going to have to write this one a little different only because we're dealing with fractions. So write down the problem if you've not already done so. We have 2/5 G, or 2/5 times G equals 3/5. Now, same concept. We want to get rid of the number that's attached to the variable, the coefficient. So what I normally do on this, it would be kind of odd to draw lines underneath this. It would look kind of crazy like this. Okay, so that looks a little unusual. We'll see if it'll let me erase now. Oh goodness, hang on. So sorry, I knew that would happen. Let's see, let me go back to the current slide here. So we don't want to write that underneath there like that. So what I normally do on these is I do just kind of go to the side and do that, because on this side, I do need them lined up side by side in order to do my keep, change, flip. Let me go back up here and write that back in since it erased it. Keep, change, flip. Okay, so it's going to be more helpful to write them sideways when you are doing fractions, okay, because you do need to follow that keep, change, flip rule. Now this is going to cancel out just like we canceled out when we had the whole numbers, okay? You're just going to write that in, cancel it out. So on this side, I'm left with G over here. On this side, it's very important that you have them in the correct order so you don't get the wrong answer, okay? So I have my original 3/5. I've gone beside of it and put divide by 2/5. So now I'm going to follow my keep, change, flip. And if you remember when we did this back earlier in the year, we would write the K, the C, and the F above each part. Now this is where some kids make a mistake and put them in the wrong order. You want to keep them in this order, okay? So the K above the 3/5 tells me to keep the 3/5 the same. The C tells me to change the division sign to multiplication. And I'm flipping the second one. Don't switch the order here, okay? So I'm going to flip the second one. So that becomes 5/2. Okay, now at this point we have a multiplication problem with fractions. If you remember how to cross reduce, you can cross reduce. I'm going to do it since these are not large numbers. I'm just going to multiply straight across, and then I'll show you how we cross reduce in case you forgot. So I'm going to say 3 times 5 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10. Remember, when you multiply fractions, you go straight across. Remember a little rhyme, multiplying fractions, not a big problem. Top times top and bottom times bottom. That was our little rhyme from the beginning of the year. So I'm going to multiply straight across, and I get 15/10, which is improper. So I need to convert that. So you can, if you can do it without using the division house, you can. 10 goes into 15 one time with 5 left over. So we have 1 5/10. If you can't do it in your head, you can go over here. Remember, top dog in the house, and we can divide it out that way. So 10 goes into 15 one time, which is 10. And then so you still get 1 5/10. Now look and see if that will reduce. We can divide that by 5, and we get 1 1/2. Okay, 1 1/2. Now, really quickly, I want to show you. I know some people understood how to cross reduce. Okay, but some people got confused. So I've got my answer written over there. Look right here. I'm going to show you how if you cross reducing can just save you a little work. So you look at the numbers across from each other. So let's start with the 3 and the 2. You want to think, is there a number that can divide into both of these? Okay. Well, there's nothing that there's not a common factor between the 3 and the 2. So that those two can't reduce. Look at the 5 and the 5 that are across from each other. Think, is there a number that can divide into both of them? Well, they're the same number. So if they're the same number, the 5 can go into both of them. I always told my kids, if you're cross reducing and you've got the same number across from each other, just divide them by themselves and you get 1. Okay, so then you could multiply. 3 times 1 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now we still have an improper, and I can say 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 left over, and you still get the 1 1/2, just with a little less work. Okay, remember, cross reducing is simply reducing at the beginning of the problem instead of at the end of the problem. Okay, first way we worked it, we had to reduce at the end. This time we reduced at the beginning. So it saves you a little bit of work. But if it's confusing, you don't have to do that. It's more helpful, especially when you have larger numbers. Okay, so we got our answer of 1 1/2. Now we still have to check it. Okay, so I'm going to plug 1 1/2 in for G. So I've got 2/5 times 1 1/2, and it's supposed to equal 3/5. Now it's a little more work to check these, because if you look at this, normally, multiplying fractions, you go straight across, but we have a mixed number. We have 1 1/2. So if you remember, if you have a mixed number, you have to do the backwards C and convert it to an improper fraction. So we have 2/5 times 1 1/2 converts to, let's see, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3, so this becomes 3/2. Okay. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. You want to always look and see if it will reduce. I can divide them by 2, and I get 3/5, which is what I was supposed to get. So that checks out. So that one's got a little work. Okay. Luckily, you don't have a lot of fraction problems on your homework. Let's see. I think I see, if I'm looking at it, I like 2. Okay. So it's not terrible. So this one had a lot of work in it. It had a little bit of everything. Okay. But just remember, when we're dividing these fractions, you have to do the keep, change, flip. If you forget that, please write that in your notes. Please make that note for yourself. Okay, if you need to pause this and copy any of this down, please do so. All right, let's try one more with a fraction. It says, how do you make a whole number a fraction? Remember, how do you make a whole number a fraction? You put a 1 under it. Okay, if you forgot that, write that down. You put a 1 under it. So for this one, we have 1/2 times x equals 4. Okay, 1/2 times x equals 4. So again, we're going to do the inverse. We're going to divide. Okay, and we have to divide by whatever's attached to the variable. So we're going to divide that side by 1/2, and that cancels out. Now, remember, we just said, how do you make a whole number a fraction? We've got to put a 1 under the 4, and then we're going to divide by the 1/2, just like we did on the other side. Now, remember what we just said on the last slide. To divide fractions, we must do keep, change, flip. So write that above that. Write the KCF above it. We're going to keep the first one, change the sign, and flip the second one. Now, this is going to be a little easier. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. So 8/1 becomes 8. So my answer is x equals 8. That one was a little easier than the last one. So to check ourselves, plug 8 in. We've got 1/2 times 8 is supposed to equal 4. All right. Now remember, we just said to make a whole number, the 8 down here a fraction, I'm going to put a 1 under it. And I have 1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. So I get 8 over 2. That's like an improper fraction. What is 8 divided by 2? It is 4. It is supposed to equal 4. So that one checks out. So again, remember when you're dividing these fractions, you have to follow keep, change, flip. If you have a whole number involved, you put a 1 under it. If you start out with a mixed number, you have to do the backwards C, like we just did on the previous slide, and convert it. Okay? Go back and look. If you forgot how we did the backwards C, go back to the previous slide and watch what I did to that 1 1/2. All right. Now we're going to talk about how to do a decimal. Okay? We've got 25 hundredths times F equals 10. Okay, so write that down. Again, think about what we're going to divide. We're going to divide both sides by the coefficient. In this case, it's 25 hundredths. Okay, so that's going to cancel, and we have F equals. Now, remember how we divided with decimals. Okay, top dog in the house. You're going to have to go to the side and do some division. Okay, top dog in the house. So the 10 goes into the division house. Now remember when we divided fractions, we said you cannot divide, not fractions, I'm sorry, decimals. You cannot divide with a decimal outside the division house. So we have to move the decimal to the end. All this stuff we did at the beginning of the year. So we move the decimal on the outside till we get it to the end. We called it move it, because however many times I move it on the outside, I have to move the decimal the same number of times on the inside of the house. Now on the 10, you don't see a decimal. So remember, that's a whole number. We said on a whole number, the decimal is understood to be at the end. So since I'm moving the decimal 2 times on the outside, I have to move it 2 times on the inside. So my decimal is going to be way down here. And then I've got to fill in these zeros. Okay, so now you can rewrite the problem if you want to. If that helps you, you can leave it like that. If you want to rewrite it, you have 25, because we moved it to the end and made it a whole number, into 1,000. Okay, so 25 can't go into 1, 25 cannot go into 10, but 25 can go into 100. Think about quarters. We've talked about that a lot with 25s. So 25 goes into 100 4 times evenly. That's like $1. Think about it like that. 4 quarters make $1. You have to account for this last zero. 25 cannot go into 0. So my answer is 40. So F equals 40. Okay. Not 4, but 40. So now we want to check ourselves. So I've got 25 hundredths times 40 is supposed to equal 10. Okay. Let's see if it equals 10. So again, I'm going to have to go to the side. I'm going to have to multiply this time to check myself. Okay, 0 times 5, 0 times 2, 0 times 0. So I've multiplied the 0 first. When you get to the second row, drop a 0. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. Add that up. And remember, when you multiply decimals, we called it move out. I had to move the decimal out 2 places, so I move it in 2 places. So my answer is 10, so that checks out. Okay, again, if you need to pause it to write any of that down, please do so. All right, now we're going to do just maybe one, no more than 2 word problems, okay? Now remember, today we're doing multiplication equations, guys. So you are going to write a multiplication equation for these word problems. That should make it easy. I think you only have one on your homework. So let's look at this. Think about that. We're going to do a multiplication equation. So that's part of the figuring out what to do is knowing what operation to do. So since we're doing multiplication equations, we know that we're going to write a multiplication equation. So let's look at this problem. You might want to just write this one down. Suppose Nicole ran 12 miles in 4 days. If she ran the same amount every day, how much did she run each day? Okay, now let's think about a multiplication equation. Think about the ones we just worked. Okay, you had a number touching a variable equaling your total. Okay, so you had, I'm just kind of write out a model here, okay, to go by. Think about look at your paper. Look at the ones you just wrote down. Okay, you have a number and a variable. They're touching, meaning multiply, and that's going to equal your total. Okay, so a number times a variable equaling your total. So that's how we want to set up this equation. So Nicole ran 12 miles in 4 days. She ran the same amount every day. We want to know how much she ran each day. So again, we're going to make a multiplication equation. So think about what's the total? What's the total amount she ran? Well, she ran a total of 12 miles. So that means my 12 is going to be here. Okay, think about this. We're multiplying, so the bigger number should be my answer, as long as you're not dealing with fractions or decimals. If you've got whole numbers, then the biggest number should be your total. Nicole ran 12 miles in 4 days. So I would want to say 4M, I'm just going to use M for miles. So 4 days, she ran so many miles each day for a total of 12 miles. So my equation is going to be 4M, or 4 times M, equals 12. And then it's going to be easy to solve. So divide both sides by 4, and M equals 3. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And we can check ourselves. I didn't leave myself much room there. Plug 3 in for M. Okay, 4 times 3 is supposed to equal 12. 4 times 3 is 12, so that checks out. Okay, again, you know you're making a multiplication equation today. So think about what number can I multiply to a variable to get the bigger number when you read the problem. Okay, let's try one more, and then we'll let you get started on your assignment. You don't have to write you don't have to write all the words down on this one. Just go along with me and write down the equation. Krista has owned her cell phone for 8 months, which is twice as long as her sister Allie owned her cell phone. How long has Allie owned her cell phone? Okay, I know that sounds a little tricky. Sometimes you have to read them twice. But let's pull out what we know. So we know Krista has owned her cell phone for 8 months. Oh, my board's starting to squiggle. 8 months. And this is twice as long as her sister. Now think about the clue word twice. We talked about that back a while back when we were doing expressions and other things. We're talking about clue words with word problems. Twice means 2 times something. Oh, well, there goes my board. 2 times something. Okay, if you have twice as much, you multiply something times 2. So for this one, 8 is the total. Okay, I can't multiply 8 times something and get 2, but I can multiply 2 times something and get 8. So my equation for this is 2x equals 8. Okay, or whatever variable you want to use. 2x equals 8. So then we would divide both sides by 2 and get x equals 4. So Allie's owned her phone for 4 months. Okay. This is Krista's owned hers twice as long. So that means she's owned hers longer. So then we want to check this. Plug 4 into the equation. Supposed to equal 8. 2 times 4 is 8, so that checks out. Okay. All right. I hope this helped. I didn't want to go too fast, but at the same time, I wanted to not take forever too. We'll skip over those other couples. We'll work those in class. You do have an assignment like you've had all week. It is a Google form. Please make sure when you are doing your assignment, just like you have on the other two equations this week, please make sure that you are showing your work using 5 lines and you submit a picture of your notes and your work to your teacher. As always, you can ask Mr. Harden or Miss Klein or myself questions if you have questions on any of this. Make sure you're reading the instructions, showing your work, and I hope everyone has a great